All right, good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to apologize. I know, of course, it's the hottest day and the AC does not seem to be working. So, I mean, it's been hot all morning, so super fun times. But we're just going to press on. Hopefully, it'll start kicking on. I've notified admin, so hopefully they get that resolved. Hopefully sooner rather than later. But anyways, for you guys' warm-up today, just kind of a little reflection on 7 floors since we're done reading that. You do need to save the story though with all the annotations on it. That's why I had you take pictures of it because we will be using it when it's time to start working on our essay in October because we're going to be looking back at some of the stories that we've read. So don't lose it. You want to hang on to it so that way you have all the annotations and everything. But right now, I kind of want to know, I want you to answer both of these questions. What parts of 7 Floors did you like? What parts did you not like? Because obviously there's, with every story, even if it's one of your favorite stories, probably going to be some things that you thought like could have been better or you just didn't like as much. So, but what were some of those things you did like and some of those things that you didn't like? So do 1, maybe 2 sentences for each. So 2 to 3 sentences, but go ahead and do that. And remember, we are turning in warm-ups this Friday. You should have 9 total warm-ups by the time you're done. Same ones as last week, yeah. Yeah.
Because I was going to give you Friday. That's why we have it.
Yeah. Sure. You mean one? Okay.
You can go for it.
What's it?
What did you
We did. We finished the questions from the sub, and then you had to do the Flipgrid assignment.
That's okay.
That's on Canvas, yeah. Yep. Like I said, if you miss, you can always. I record the videos, although I didn't that day, but everything that we did is on Canvas. So, yeah. All right. So let's hear what some of you had to say. Okay, Jillian. Was either tell me the thing that you liked or the thing you didn't like about the story. The big one.
I didn't read it.
Well, we read it together in class pretty much.
How was it?
The whole thing? Oh, you were absent last week, that's right. Okay, so you'll need to make sure that and you can get caught up this week, okay? Alright, let's see. Nathan. One thing you liked or one thing you didn't like?
Like there was a sneaking suspicion that the nurses knew something that we didn't know.
Okay, so you like that part of it? Okay, so kind of like the almost like the mystery kind of involved in it a little bit. Okay. Let's go with Jesus. Yeah. Okay, you said one more time. I said you really want that. Gotcha. Okay, so you did or didn't like that part? Didn't like it. Okay, sorry. Okay. James.
What I didn't like, I mean, like, can I say both or just one?
You just pick one.
What I didn't like was I wish some of the floors they had like more description, like more that I could like get to the story more. I guess you said.
Okay. Yeah, and I think that that's one thing that I heard from my first period a lot too, is that it was kind of vague. So like it wasn't as descriptive as stories are kind of used to. Did anybody say anything about not liking that you didn't know what illness he had? Did anybody say that or no? A couple of you? Okay. So that was one of the complaints that I heard from first period also. And why do you think that they didn't tell us what illness he had? Like, why do you think that the author left that out? Because obviously, he could have just, Dino Mazzotti could have just said, oh, well, he had cancer, right? But how would that have changed the story?
Yeah.
Okay, add suspense.
Maybe because the illness isn't the main focus of the story, so it's just like, so they're not focusing on the illness itself, but the message that they're trying to get across.
Okay, so not focusing on the illness. What's it? Anybody have any other reasons? Okay. How do you guys? What is? If it was cancer, how is cancer treated usually? Like, what kinds of treatments do people get? Right, and most of us know that, right? Chemotherapy, various forms of radiation. There's like other. I mean, I don't know too many, but we all know chemo for sure, right? So that's a treatment that we all know. So if they would have said he had cancer, we would just be reading the whole time. Why aren't they just giving the dude chemo? Like, whatever, like what's going on here? But they don't really like mention like many of the treatments that he's getting. And I think it's partially because of like what Sarah was saying about the whole like it's not the focus of the story. So by like leaving that part out of it, by omitting it, which if you omit something that means to leave something out, I think that it did kind of force us to focus more on like the operation of the hospital and less on what was wrong with him, and just say like, well, why aren't they like helping this dude, or why aren't they being honest with him too? Because I think that was a big part of it too, is that like the doctors seemed to know that he was dying, and they knew that his treatment, that his that it was getting worse, that his outlook wasn't looking good, but they kept reassuring him that it was going to get better, And then with each floor, obviously, like, even if he didn't want to admit it, even if the doctors didn't want to admit it, he progressively got worse. So, yeah, I think that those are all good points. Did anybody like anything about it? Because I know we all tend to skew negative sometimes. Did anybody like anything about it?
I mean, what I kind of liked about it, the way it was has like different floors. For each floor, it's like called some sort of like different thing. But at the same time, again, there's like that negative part where it's like, oh yeah, it has 7 floors.
Right.
Okay, we kind of just spoiled what's gonna happen.
Right. Yeah, and somebody said that in the last class too, that it was almost too much foreshadowing, because it was like you knew exactly how the story was going to end, basically, with like a one giant spoiler, basically. And then there's another aspect of it. We didn't really like get too far into it. We could have gone a lot deeper into it, but I want to make sure that we like move on through other stories too. But Dino Buzzati is an Italian author. One of the most famous, like if you're like into literature, like one of the most classic Italian works of literature is called Dante's Inferno. And Dante's Inferno is about this character. He follows his love into hell, basically. He's like chasing her. He's trying to like, he's just trying to like follow her, basically. And he goes through what they call like 7 circles of hell. If you've ever heard that phrase, that's what it's from. It's from that book. And so, again, you think 7 circles of hell, 7 floors, each floor got progressively worse, just like hell does. And you could even think about, like, he might have been inspired by that, especially being an Italian author, like, kind of like going back to like some Italian like literature that most Italians would be familiar with. So just another like kind of wrinkle to it that was kind of like, oh, that's called an allusion when they make like a reference to something from another famous work. Anyways, we are going to be moving on to a different story. We're still going to be focusing on transformation this week. But first, something that I started doing last year that I wanted to start doing again is just going over, like at the beginning of the week, what I've been up to. So what I've been watching is What We Do in the Shadows, which is a like fake documentary series about vampires. It's a comedy. It's inappropriate, it's stupid, but it's just kind of fun, mindless watching. I've been reading this trilogy called the Broken Earth Trilogy. It's actually my second time reading it. This time I'm technically reading it for one of my classes that I'm getting for my master's program. So I just finished the 5th season yesterday, and then I started reading The Obelisk Gate. I am listening to it on audio, which has been super helpful because I've been moving, so I've been able to listen to it as I've been unpacking stuff. Listening to, other than the book, but West Coast versus Wessex is basically it's a compilation album. It's a punk band and a folk singer who are like playing each other's songs, and it's just kind of fun to hear like the different versions of songs I already know. Anyway, so getting back on track. So the story that we're reading, that we're going to start reading today is called Biafra. Now, probably a word you haven't been familiar with or don't know about. It's actually the name of a former country. So it was a country in Africa that is now part of Nigeria. There was a bloody civil war between like the northern part of Nigeria and the southern part of it. Biafra was like the region that tried to separate from Nigeria, and it did for a little bit. But millions of people died because Nigeria wanted to keep everybody intact. They didn't like the way that they were being treated, so they tried to separate. And even though they lost, but Nigeria still treats that part of their country very poorly. They're very heavily discriminated against. So, and there's still lots of violence that goes on between the two regions. So, the author of the story is Nadima Agoraport, which she actually goes by Nedi, N-N-E-D-I, usually. So if you ever like search her, you'll see those 2 names pop up. But she's the daughter of Nigerian immigrants. She's the author of Biafra. She actually also, she does a lot of science fiction, but she actually wrote, I know, for the Black Panther comic books for a little while. She did like some story art for it. She's actually done quite a bit of Black Panther, but she specializes in magic realism, which we're going to talk about that concept today. It's kind of going to be, in addition to transformation, is kind of going to be the focus of the week. So she's been very outspoken on Biafran and Nigerian politics, and obviously speaking on behalf of the Biafran area. Okay, so magic realism. We are going to be writing our own creative stories this week. So that's what we're going to be doing most of the block day. After we talk about the story a little bit, is we're going to be writing our own story. But and it could be about anything, but the only wrinkle is that it has to fit within the genre of magic realism. So I'm going to explain to you what that is. We're going to talk about how the story we're reading is an example of it, what makes it magic realism. Has anybody heard that phrase before? A couple of you? Okay. I'm actually surprised it's that many of you, frankly. Most of the time it's usually zero. So, but magic realism is a genre of writing that was actually popularized and actually originated really in a lot of ways, at least the term magic realism among Latin writers. So specifically, like probably one of the most famous magic realists, his name is Garcia Marquez. Blanking on the name of some of his books right now, but he's kind of like the father of magic realism. And I'll kind of get into why like it kind of originated in Latin writers, more so than like other writers. But what it is though, it's a realistic account. So it takes, rather than taking place in like a magical world where like there's dragons and stuff like that, or everybody has superpowers, like technically like comic books wouldn't be magic realism because there's so much unnatural things and supernatural things going on that those wouldn't really be magic realism. Even though they're kind of like in a more realistic world in some ways, but magic realism takes place in the world we know of. Nobody has powers really. Everybody is completely normal. Occasionally though, in the books or in the stories, in our realistic world, mystical, magical, supernatural, unnatural things occur. But it's not constant. It's like a few, like once or twice here and there. And it's kind of just like spread throughout the books. And the most important thing is like with superheroes, they always give it an explanation. Spider-Man, bit by a radioactive spider. Hulk, gamma rays or whatever. So there's always like some sort of reason like why it happened to those characters. In magic realism, there's usually not an explanation. So kind of like in Seven Floors, where there is no explanation of his illness, in magic realism, there's no explanation for why these magical or unnatural things are happening. The reason why they do it, though, the reason why it's there is to make like an emphasis or to like make a point about something. Maybe it's like to help like emphasize what their like theme is, what their message is. So like I said, it could emphasize the quality about the character. So maybe the character does something unnatural and it's meant to like exaggerate a quality about that character. Like it's meant to like really focus on this one. Like maybe it's a personality trait. Maybe it's an idea they have. Like I said, it could be the feelings the character is experiencing. It could exaggerate that. It could be creating a metaphor for the importance of the event. So just a reminder, metaphors are something is something else. Like he is a cheetah is a metaphor. So something comparing two things that are different but have similar qualities. So that's what a metaphor is. Okay, magic realism convention. What a convention is like almost like a rule that like magic realism usually like has these like ideas in them. So hybridity, does everybody know what the word hybrid means?
Yeah.
Okay, so I've heard a lot from you. I want to make sure I hear from other people too, give everybody a chance. So if you have a hybrid car, what is that a combination of? Right, but what were you saying?
Gasoline and electricity.
Gasoline and electricity. It's two fuel types being used in conjunction to power one vehicle. So it's not a gas vehicle or a electric vehicle, it's both. It's a hybrid. So hybridity, when we talk about people, is when it's like two cultures converging and mixing and blending together. That's what hybridity is. So for example, in like California, Arizona, we have a lot of Hispanic influence on American culture and vice versa. American culture has also influenced Hispanic culture in the area as well. So there's been influence on both. So they've become almost a hybrid of two separate things, but have created almost a new identity in them, right? So, but it's also the challenges, because obviously, like when you blend two cultures, there are going to be challenges. There's going to be conflicting ideas. Like one culture might find one thing important, and another culture might find something completely different important. And sometimes those two different ideas can clash. And it's kind of like trying to figure out like what works and what doesn't when you're like blending or having the hybrid of the two cultures. Political critique. Does everybody know what the word critique means? If you critique something, what are you doing? Criticizing, and it could be like good or bad, right? So you could be, if you're critiquing something, it's not always pointing out the flaws of something. You could also be pointing out like things that are done well. But a political critique, parts of the story might question like the government or society, especially if there's like a dominant society or government involved in the story. It could involve like how are the characters like being like oppressed by the larger government. So we're gonna see that in the Biafra story, how like there's a bigger, more powerful government that's oppressing like the smaller like government or the people of a certain region who like aren't able to like break free of the power of the more dominant culture. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and play this video real quick, and it's a video with this Indian dude. And when I say Indian, I don't mean Native American. Whenever I say Indian, I mean they're from India. So just for clarity's sake, just to make sure we all understand that. His name is Salman Rushdie. He's literally my favorite author. And it's not Salmon. A lot of people will look at his name as Alman. Remember, salmon is Salmon. So he's not a fish. But Salman Rushdie. He's from India. He moved to England when he was a child. So he has a British accent because he's been pretty much his entire life in England. But anyways, he wrote several very famous books, including one where he was actually, an entire government wanted to assassinate him for the book, actually. So the Iranian government, they placed what's called a fatwa, which a fatwa is like a religious decree saying like your religion demands that you kill him. And obviously it wasn't all of Islam, it was an extremist part of Islam that was wanting to kill him. And basically why is because in the book he said negative things about not just Islam, he made negative comments about all religion, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism. So he kind of spread the criticism all around, but it definitely rubbed the Iranian government the wrong way. And so he actually went into hiding for 10 years because people were trying to kill him. So anyways, the book's called Satanic Verses. So, I mean, that kind of gives you a hint to why it might have been controversial for not just people of Islam religion. But anyways, all right, so this is him talking about magic realism because a lot of what he writes is within that genre. Well, I think I'm going to show you the video. The internet has sucked today, so.
Stories don't have to be true. And that by including elements of the fantastic, elements of fable, or mythological elements of fairy tale, or just pure make-believe, you can actually start getting at the truth in a different way. It's another door into the truth. And that's why I think the thing that is interesting about the phrase magic realism is that when it's used, people tend only to hear the word magic. So they think it's just about fantasy. But the word realism is as important. And what this kind of writing tries to do is to be grounded in the real, to be grounded in an actual, quite strong vision of the real, and then use techniques to express that vision, which don't necessarily have to be realistic. The thing about magic realism, so-called, is that it's a new-ish name for a very old thing. And this particular name came into being in Latin America in the late 1950s, and was used to describe a group of writers: Borges, Garcia Marquez, Vargas Llosa, Julio Cortázar, Alejo Carpentier, and several others, who used techniques which diverged from straightforward naturalistic writing. And they used elements of fantasy and dream and included those in the text of the story as if they had the same status as observable facts. I've always been, as a writer, from the very beginning, I was interested in this general area of fiction. I mean, I started out, as a young person long before I wrote anything. I was very, very interested in science fiction, and I read an enormous amount of science fiction in my teens and early 20s. And actually, my first novel, Primus, which was published more or less just over 40 years ago, was really in that area. It wasn't science fiction, but it was certainly fantasy fiction. Because I think that form, what might be better called speculative fiction, has always been a very good vehicle for the novel ideas. If you have ideas that you want to set in motion and interrogate, argue about, science fiction, fantasy fiction has always done that. Always done it very well. So I always had that interest. So that interest in that kind of genre fiction, combined with my knowledge of Eastern fable and folktale and fairy tale, and all that went towards turning me into the writer that I became.
Okay. All right. So again, so he just obviously gave a little bit of a history. He talked about, like I said, some Latin authors and how they would use, like, dreams are a big part of magic realism too. Has anybody seen the movie Inception? A couple of you. Okay. Again, more of my last time. Or maybe you guys are just more willing to come forward and admit that you watched it. Not that it's a bad movie. I actually really like that movie. But there's a famous scene that happened at it. So even if you haven't watched it, it's okay. But basically, the whole idea of the story is that in some parts of the story, they're like able to go into people's minds. Like they're able to like travel through people's minds, and sometimes people have gotten stuck like in that like kind of mind world, that dream world almost. And so at the very end, and they all have these like little things that they take from the real world into the like dream world. They kind of make sure that they have like a grasp of reality. And one of them has like a top that you spin. And at the end of the movie, the final scene is basically you see a cup spinning on a table, and then for a few moments it starts to waver, because in the dream world it'll continuously spin forever, whereas in reality, obviously, it would fall over. And at the very end, it's spinning, and then it like starts to topple over, and then it cuts away. So you don't know if it's about to fall over or not, which if you were going to watch that, I'm not spoiling anything, because it's one of those things where you get to choose the ending. Is the character in the dream world? Is the character not in the dream world? So that's the thing with magic realism, too. You get to decide, is it really happening, or is it like a figment of the character's imagination? Is it an exaggeration? So it's kind of like reader's choice. However you want to interpret it, it can be interpreted both ways. It's purposely vague. And again, I'm sorry, it's very hot. I've been checking with the other teachers. They say their rooms are all cool, so you guys are just unfortunately the lucky bunch who gets to endure the super hot room. So I'm sorry. Anyways, so you're going to be writing your own story this week that involves magic realism. Before you do that, though, I feel like it's important for you to read a magic realism story. Yeah.
Would Seven Floors be a magic realism?
What's that?
Would Seven Floors be like a magic realism story?
It wouldn't be magic realism because nothing really unnatural occurs in it. I mean, it's unusual for sure, and it's like kind of like ridiculous or absurd the way that like the hospital treats them, but there's no like magic that happens. There's no fantasy elements. You'll definitely know in this story when like magic things are going to be happening, so it'll be a little bit more obvious. Okay. Too far. It's not tomorrow yet. And just a reminder too, I know your teachers might have told you, but tomorrow's late start, so class starts at 9:20, so you're going to your 4th period tomorrow. I know it's really weird, I know it's kind of unusual, I believe me, I wish it was 135, 246 like it used to be. I've asked admin and I've gone kind of like shrug emoji kind of response basically from them. It's like, they haven't really given me a real reason. Something about part-time working teachers, but it doesn't make sense. But anyways, getting past that, tomorrow will be 1, 2, 3. No, 4, 5, 6 tomorrow, and then Thursday will be 1, 2, 3. So yeah.
Because our teachers told us like, oh, to remember it, it's like even days it's gonna be 4, 5, 6.
Exactly.
Odd days are gonna be 4, 5, 6.
Yep. So I mean, so at least that part will still be true. We could still at least say, even though it's not odd and even periods like it used to be, you could say that the day starts with an even period and it starts with an odd period. So tomorrow is the 8th, so it's going to start with even periods, so 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
I was also wondering, what is tutorial?
What is it? Tutorial is, and obviously if you're new to the district, you wouldn't know. So obviously tomorrow's late start, the teachers are meeting till 9:20. Tutorial is from 7:45 to like 8:30, I believe, and then class starts at 8:35, if I'm not mistaken. But basically what that is if you go to like the different classrooms, you could go to any of your classes to like ask for help, to work on homework or anything, or just, hang out. But basically they will tell you that you need to go to a classroom though, so they don't want people like hanging out at the tables or anything. So they do want you to like, and I know you guys didn't experience this last year as freshmen, obviously, but you might have heard about it before. Yeah.
I was gonna say, for tutorial, do you have like the same thing, like 4, 5, 6, that thing?
You can literally go to any teacher.
No, but I'm telling you, after tutorial.
Oh yeah. So after tutorial, will be 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So tomorrow late start 4, 5, 6. Thursday tutorial 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you can go to any teacher. You can even just go to like a random teacher that you know that you don't have a class. If you know any teachers, like your freshman teachers that you want to say hi.
Would I have to be here for tutorial or could I come later?
You technically can't come later. It's technically not like not what they would call compulsory, meaning that you have to be here. So you're not gonna get like marked absent or anything, but do make sure that you are on time for tutorial for first period, because they've been like really like sending out messages saying like you will be given lunch detention if you're not on time for like, late start or tutorial, blah, blah, blah. So again, just think of it this way. You get to sleep in. I don't. You can laugh at me if you guys come in and say, "Ha, I got to sleep in." You got to be at work at the same time, but that's okay. It's fine. But we're going to be reading, getting back to this. Oh, did anybody have any other questions about the tutorial late start? Again, I know it's completely different from the first couple of weeks. So I want to make sure that everybody's good. So tomorrow, 4, 5, 6, after at 9:20, 1, 2, 3 on Thursday, 8:35 is when it starts. And again, if you need questions about like missing assignments, I graded a bunch of stuff last night. I'm still grading your final drafts of your essays, and I'm still grading the annotations from last week too. But I've been getting through most stuff, so if you feel like you've turned something in, just double check Canvas. If you turn in a paper copy, just let me know. Again, that tutorial would be a good time to bring that up to me. But anyways, all right, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pass out this story now. And make sure you're hanging on to these because again, they're gonna be super useful when we go to write our essays next month. So you wanna make sure you save them so that way you have like all the quotes and stuff underlined and ready to go. And then I'll get you have this story from last week. Okay, I'll get it. Was there anybody else who didn't get 7 floors last week? Who needs it? No? Welcome. It's very similar to this that we did last week for this story. I mean, you're going to be boxing things that have imagery, but if you just look at last week, how we assigned them in the module for last week, and just go down the list, you should be fine. So if you have questions, you can come a tutorial, you can message me online if you need it. Okay. There's one for her too. Anybody not get one or too many? Okay, so kind of similar to 7 floors, like I said. It's a little different, just the boxing is different, but we're still circling words we don't know. And there's probably going to be some words that are like in like different language that you would probably circle because you don't know them. I don't know. I had to look them up. But instead of boxing words for imagery like we did in 7 floors, where we like the way the building looked or the rooms looked, we're going to box any words that seem magical or unnatural. And then underlining words or phrases that show arroyos, which is the main character's name, showing her feelings, because we want to see how those feelings change over the course of the book, or the story, I mean. And then highlight anything that seems important. It could be foreshadowing, it could be hinting at a theme. Okay, so it's actually less than half the length because 7 floors was like 12 full pages. This is like 5 pages and it spills over onto the 6th page. So we should be able to get, most people actually finished last period, or at least half of them finished during class. Whatever you don't finish, so like let's say you have like 1 page left at the end of the period, that'll be homework, but that's all you guys have to do. And remember, you don't have my class tomorrow. You have it Thursday, so technically you would have today and tomorrow to get it done. Although I would always suggest not procrastinating. It's one of the things that I've had to learn personally firsthand, because I used to, during high school, I would procrastinate all the time. During a lot of college, I would procrastinate. I'll tell you guys, I'll be honest with you, I'll be real with you guys about this. This is actually I told you guys I'm in the master's program right now. This is my 2nd attempt at the master's program. My first attempt was it was about 10 years ago, 11 years ago. I had just finished getting my bachelor's degree from Fresno State. So I got my bachelor's in English, which is the 4-year degree. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go get my master's in English now. So I attempted it the first semester. I had a 15 to 20 page paper due. It was like in October. I waited till the night before it was due to try to do it. Couldn't do it. I basically dropped out of the program. And it's something that I've had to learn with experience. So I would always just like really stress the importance, because I wish I would have done it. Learning to do a little bit each day. Like I have to write, like I wrote it was 2 weeks ago, I had to write a 10 to 15 page paper for my class. And what I did is I did like 2 pages each day, 2 to 3 pages each day, as opposed to trying to write all of it the day before. So sometimes just again, learning to do a little bit at a time definitely will help you guys. Now for this assignment, you'll get most of it done in class, so you guys should be good. But anyways, go through it. If you have any questions about the story that you guys get hung up on, again, the 2 most important things is the underlining, because we're going to be using those quotes for our essay in about a month. And then the boxing is going to help us with what we're doing this week, writing our magic realism stories. But you guys can go ahead, start reading, start annotating, and if you need me, let me know.